Hello friends, and welcome back to another video, and a special big hello if you are new. Today I thought I would finally share with you the books that I read in November. In November I read 7 physical books and 1 audiobook, so I read a grand total of 8 books, which is crazy to think about, but most of these are on the shorter side. Most of them are under 300 pages. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so I'm going to go about this in an odd way. I'm going to start with talking about 4 physical books, the audiobook, and then I'm briefly going to touch on the last 3. I promise it should make sense, or at least it makes sense in my head. So, let's get to it. I've got Clementine here too, and she wants to play. We're sitting on the floor. It's a little bit of a different background, but I already had my tripod and stuff set up today. Plus, I don't know, we have Christmas decorations up, and it's just, you have to enjoy them while you can. And the lighting is a lot better in this room than the bedroom too. But anyway, now let's get to it. All right, so starting off, the first book that I read was The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. This is the prequel to Practical Magic. So this tells the story of the ants in Practical Magic. So they're growing up in 1960s New York, and they have a pretty conventional upbringing. They are told that they can go to the house that Practical Magic is set at. So they can go visit their aunt for the summer. But if they go visit their aunt for the summer, then basically their lives will be forever changed. They do decide to go, and they are more aware of their history and the type of people that the Owenses are, and they're more aware of the Owenses curse, which is in love. I really enjoyed this one. I honestly enjoyed it more than Practical Magic, just because I really loved the sibling dynamics. I loved the coming of age aspect. I thought it was written during a really cool time in history, so it was really neat to have like the 60s culture movement and the folk music movement and all of that. But then we also got like bits of the Vietnam War and things like that. And I just think that is a time period in history that you don't read about as much. I also felt that this had the perfect dose of magical realism. I felt, for me, Practical Magic just didn't feel as magical, and this did. It delivered perfectly. I also cannot wait to read the prequel to this prequel, which I think is called Magic Lessons. I'm so excited for that one. I'm going to have to keep an eye out at like half price and like used bookstores, because I definitely want to be reading that one next fall. But yes, I loved this one. It was a 4 out of 5 star read. The next book that I read was Jane Eyre. I actually started Jane in October, and I thought that I would finish her in October, and I didn't. It took me so much longer to get through this than I thought. If you do not know the story of Jane Eyre, it tells the story of an orphan named Jane. She goes to live with her aunt and uncle, and her uncle kind of caters to her and likes her, and on his deathbed, he has his wife promise to raise Jane. And she does so, but without any type of love or affection for Jane. Jane eventually leaves her aunt's house and goes to a school. And again, just really like sad, tragic things happen, but life does turn around for Jane, and she does kind of find a family within her school. She studies to be a governess and eventually leaves the school to become a governess at Mr. Rochester's house for his ward. While there are some very peculiar and creepy things that go on, and Jane is trying to kind of figure out what those things are, as well as beginning a relationship in some sorts with Mr. Rochester. I loved this book. This is the 3rd time that I've read it, and I hadn't read it in 10 years according to Goodreads. And it was so good. Jane is honestly one of my favorite heroines in all of literature. She just has so much gumption. She has so much integrity. And I don't know, she is not going to compromise on what she wants or what she feels is right. And I just think if you've not read Jane Eyre, you're doing yourself such a disservice, because she is just an incredible character. I also didn't realize how many times in this book, Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester would have conversations, and he'd be like, Jane, do you think me handsome? And she'd be like, no, you're ugly. Like almost word for word, those were the conversations that they had, but I really enjoyed it. In the past, when I had read this book, I always found that I enjoyed the parts at Thornfield Hall the most, and not as much when Jane was coming of age, or in the bits toward the end of the book. I don't want to spoil anything if you've not read it, but this time I like loved it all as a whole so much more than I had in the past. Like every little section was so good. And I still obviously loved Thornfield Hall the most, but because I feel like that's where Jane really comes into her own and grows in like her confidence and becomes more self-assured. But as a whole, it was so good. This book is just a masterpiece, and I feel like you just need to read it because it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's definitely within my top 10. The next book that I read was Cold Clay. This is the second book in the Shady Hollow series. The Shady Hollow series are a series of murder mysteries, and they take place in Shady Hollow, which is a little village in the forest, and all of the characters are animals. So this takes place right after the first book. So the town is kind of settling down from the past murder, and they find the bones of a moose. Every eyes are pointed to Joe, who is the owner of the coffee shop in town, and they believe that it is his wife, who was believed to have run off, but now obviously everyone thinks that she was potentially murdered. Vera Vixen is a fox, and she is a reporter, and she is who solved the prior murder in the first book, and now she is trying to prove that Joe is innocent because she does not think that he would murder anyone. These books are sweet, they are cozy, they are good, they are fun. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars just because it's not anything exceptional. I'm not like addicted to the series. I will probably put this one down and not pick up the next book in the series for a really long time, but they're good and they're fun when you're in the mood for something like just a cozy, low stakes murder mystery. I really enjoy them and highly recommend them, and I will definitely continue on with the series as well. All right, the last physical book that I'm going to talk about is The Fires of Autumn by Irène Némirovksy. I know I butchered her name, and I apologize, but I am not French. So this tells a story. It's kind of interconnected characters, essentially from 2 families. It tells the story of them prior to World War I, during World War I, prior to World War II, and then during World War II. And I have to say, I loved this author's first book that I read from her, which is Sweet Françoise. Again, I know I butchered the French, and I apologize, but I love that book. I think it's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite books of all time. So I was really excited for this one, and I didn't really like it. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and honestly, if it hadn't have been a shorter novel, I probably wouldn't have finished it. The characters were so dimensional, and obviously when you're covering just really big pivotal times of history in a short amount of pages, this book as a whole is 220 some pages long, 29. Obviously you're not going to have a lot of time to explore the characters, so I knew going into it that I wasn't going to be like overly attached and have really drawn out character explorations or anything like that, but I found pretty much every single character unlikable. The main character to me was just atrocious. And the women, the way that the women were written, it was really, so you kind of have 2 main women that the main character kind of has like relationships with. And the first one is good and pure-hearted and just pure and chaste and, just follows the rules, always does the right thing. Is just this perfect person. And then the other character was promiscuous and bad and selfish and, mistreated people. And I really just hated that stereotype with the female characters. And it really, like I said, if it had been longer, I probably wouldn't have finished it, which was a surprise because I really expected to love this one. Obviously, we all have authors and we all have their favorite book that they've written, but I really didn't expect the contrast to be so different because I really didn't enjoy this one. I do have another book by her. It's called like The Wine of Solitude or something like that, so I will give it a try, and if I like it, then I will probably continue reading some of her books, but if I don't like it, then it'll probably be it for me. All right, next I'm going to talk about the audiobook that I listened to, and it is From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. So if you do not know, Lisa Marie Presley is Elvis Presley's only child. So she began doing interviews and having different like conversations recorded so she could write her memoir. And she was very much struggling on how to get started and how to kind of navigate some of the things that had happened in her life. So she asked her daughter Riley to help her with this. And Riley Keough is Daisy Jones from Daisy Jones and the Sixth, if you have, you know, read or watched that. And so she agreed to help her mom, and then her mom passed away before they even really got started. So Riley finished the book in her mom's honor, and this book was just so well done. I just think the way that you had Lisa Marie's sections and Riley's sections and the way they just flowed in together was just really, really wonderful. It was so well done. And Lisa Marie just lived such a sad life, and there were so many traumatic things that happened to her. She had a lot of addictions, and I think it's definitely a book that if you are sensitive to certain things, you would definitely want to read any trigger warnings before going into it, because it could be a really difficult read for you. The parts at Graceland when Lisa Marie was growing up were really beautiful and fun, and I really enjoyed those, and I just like can't imagine like what that could have been like. Even reading it, I still can't imagine like going to Graceland and going to like Elvis's bedroom and eating, like they hung out in Elvis's bedroom and ate McDonald's. Like that's just mind-blowing to me. But anyway, it was really good. I really enjoyed the audiobook because I think Riley has the most soothing voice. I enjoyed listening to her parts all the time. Lisa Marie's parts are read by Julia Roberts, and I don't think Julia Roberts' voice has like enough grit to be Lisa Marie, but I love Julia Roberts, so I really did enjoy listening to her read to me. And at the beginning and ends of some chapters, they have actual recordings of Lisa Marie, so you do still get to hear her voice, and I thought that was really powerful as well. Again, it's really heavy, but it was really well done and really good. And honestly, I wish that there was more. I wish that it was a little bit longer, because I really enjoyed it so much. It was a 5-star read for me for sure. All right, and lastly, the last 3 books that I read were the first 3 books in the Little House series. So I read Little House in the Big Woods, Farmer Boy, and Little House on the Prairie. I have a whole vlog about my experience on rereading these books. I hadn't read them since I was a child, and it was a great experience, but I won't blab on about it too much, just because if you're interested, you can just go and watch that vlog. But it was a really, really amazing reading experience. I enjoyed them so much as an adult. Even there were different things that stood out to me than I did as a child. I was a lot more aware of how like mistreated Indigenous people were, even like literary, the way that she wrote about them. It did leave a bad taste in my mouth. But all in all, it was just a really great adventure, and I enjoyed reading them so much. They're just pure nostalgia, and I fell in love with Paul. I think that was the biggest takeaway. Reading it as an adult compared to reading it as a child, I fall in love with the dads now instead. But it was really, really good, and I was really surprised at how much I remembered. And once I finished reading Little House on the Prairie, I wanted to keep going, but I made myself stop so I could vlog myself reading the next 3. So it's just been a really wonderful reading experience, and I highly recommend finding some book that you read as a child and rereading it as an adult. Like it's kind of magical. So, but anyway, that sums up the books that I read in November. Thank you so much for listening to me just babble on about the books, and I guess I will see you in my next video. Bye.